Hello, Curtis, and welcome to the Quantum Health Connection podcast. Vanessa and I are so excited to have you here today. So tell us how you came to be in this position of sitting here in front of us.
Yeah. So, my journey started from like birth. If you think about it, whose hasn't though? But born with a lot of health problems. And so my entire childhood was in and out of the hospital, lots of traumatic experiences throughout childhood, led into addictions, very problematic with that. And I ended up like reaching this point where I'll never forget the doctor looked me right in the eyes and was like, "You are lucky to be alive." I was tested like high blood pressures, high cholesterol, pre-diabetic, all these kind of things before the age of 18. And the big kicker was an extremely severe case of sleep apnea. I have the paper still in my nightstand from when I got tested, and I stopped breathing 71 times an hour, and my oxygen levels would sometimes hit 75%. So they're like, "We don't know how you haven't had like a heart attack or an aneurysm or any of that kind of stuff." So I've always viewed it. One girlfriend of mine was like, "That's purpose, right? That's something like something kept you alive to bring you to this point." And so I actually sought out the help of a bodybuilding coach at the time. You don't know any better. You don't know any different, right? And believe it or not, though, even with his very, very limited expertise of what I know today, he was able to help me realistically. Like, yes, there was definitely changes in the physiology to improve upon like how I felt and markers, but it was more of like instilling that hope. It was like, oh, like I was told that the sleep apnea was incurable because like I wasn't like I was big. Like I have photos on my Instagram where people like if it wasn't for the tattoos, you wouldn't even recognize that it was me, like really swollen, but not like sorry, for lack of a better term, fat. So like for the neck circumference for sleep apnea, it was more neurologically driven. So they're like, you're gonna have this for the rest of your life. It was about, I would say, a year, and I got rid of the sleep apnea machine because I tell you that thing is a nightmare. So that was huge motivation, just not to have to use something like that. But realistically, this individual just instilled a lot of hope and confidence in me, and I was like, you know what? I kind of want to do this myself. I kind of want to help other people. So I took just a basic nutrition course and then had my guinea pig, which was my one of my best friends, and did really well with him. And I like knowing where I'm at now, I just got lucky with that. So, but you just take a horrible lifestyle and make it semi good. Of course, someone's going to get results, but either way, like it sparked something. And right away, very early in my career, I don't know why this happened, but it was like, oh, hey, Curtis, here's a guy with stage 4 prostate cancer. He's got 8 months to live, right? Work with him. And, it was like, swim or drown kind of idea. And so that's what really sparked everything into the whole functional medicine realm and the blood chemistries and genetics and all the things, even on TCM, like Chinese medicine. It just sparked everything because my obsessive addictive tendencies was like, okay, I have to get this right. Like, I cannot fail at this. And early in my career, I was actually featured on the news for helping save this man's life from terminal prostate cancer. He's still alive today and everything. And so that was really the huge spark. And also, like, I call them my second family because the husband was infertile and diabetic. And now they have a child that they named after me and everything and whatnot. And so, and then that year too, menopausal female and I, we won a Canada-wide transformation challenge. So that year was just like exploded. And so then, you get that recognition, harder case after harder case after harder case. And just because failure is not an option, it just drives this obsession to constantly learn and dive into realms, things people never have heard of, whether it's like the quantum side of things, whether it's peptides, whether it's just basic medicine, whatever it takes. And Vanessa mentioned earlier, she's like, what's your expertise and what's not? I say, if it breathes, I work with it. Right. So, because I help dogs and cats too. Right. And so it's one of those things where it's an extreme passion of mine. And what really like stimulated it further too is just the death of my best friend at a very young age. And that was like, okay, well, if I continue on this path, that's going to be me and that's not going to happen. And so there was a lot of drivers from a young age to be better. And it just like grew into this, like, I am going to say obsession. It's all I do. Right. And I wouldn't have it any other way though. I love what I do. I'm very grateful. And I'm very grateful to have met people like yourself, Heather, and have worked with you and everything. And everybody is learning experience. And every day I wake up and I'm like, I can't wait to do this over and over again. So very blessed, very blessed.
Well,
So
when
yeah.
it's not when you go to work and you feel that way, you're so passionate about it, it's not work. It's something you just
Yeah.
love and enjoy and do. And then you know you found your passion and purpose. When you wake up every day and you're like, oh, I don't want to go do that. I have to go figure this out. Like, like you're not in alignment, you're not living your passion and purpose. And that alone has a quantum effect on our ability to feel good in our day and day. So that is huge. And what a beautiful story. Thanks for sharing. And thank you for sharing. I don't know a lot about you. So that is like a lot of new information for me about you and what you're working. And like, thank goodness that those people found you and you supported them. And yeah, I'm so glad you're helping people. So it's like amazing work you're doing.
Yeah. And I like that you brought up like the whole existential crisis and everything, because that's what I work with as well with people. Like, obviously, I'm not a psychologist or a therapist or anything, but we speak about those things. We have that awareness. And there are so many people when it's just like, yeah, like I don't know what to do with my life. And I'm like, well, this is gonna be a tough case. It's like, let's try to figure that out, and so that's what I try to help. Like, okay, what can I do that's within my power to help this person solve this potential existential crisis or just this confusion about where to go next. I just hopefully give people confidence to make these types of decisions to better that area of their life.
Yeah, I think
So
it's tough because all of us ideally would be able to feel comfortable or be equipped to address all the spheres, right? All the domains, the mental, emotional, and spiritual, and all the things. But it's so hard when we specialize. But you are obviously able to do that because you've been through so much and you have such a great temperament, disposition. You care so much. So you can help
Mhm.
hold people while they're like freaking out because obviously their stress is going to affect all their physiological functioning as well. So that's so fantastic that you're able to do that. So you're kind of
yeah.
known as like the peptide guy, but you do so much more than that. I
Hmm.
mean, you really, really
Hmm.
have a whole menu to offer, a vast menu and deep knowledge in a lot of different areas. So how is that for you? I'm just curious, like, what is that like for you when you're like, well, that's not all I do. Like you have a massive amount of experience and training I don't know how you describe it, like not bodybuilding, but like, a
Or like biomechanics and anatomy
biomechanics.
and
Thank you.
physiology. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. It
how do
is
you
tough.
like tailor your work to where it satisfies you and you're not only doing like one thing, peptides or whatever.
Mhm.
Yeah, so I suppose once they're in my web, they don't have a choice. I know. So like people are like, it's yeah, like I remember like working with market, you need a niche, you need a niche. I'm like, well, that's not going to happen. I would rather have my business
Same.
struggle for years than put myself down to one thing, right? And I've reached a point in my career where it's like, I mean this humbly, but I have trouble keeping up with inquiries, right? And so it's like, okay, so people will be like, hey, I heard about this peptide. Can you help me out with this peptide? I could, but I'm not gonna. This is what we're gonna do instead, right? Yes, peptides are part of the picture, right? But once you understand what a peptide does, you realize that there are much deeper rooted things that need to be addressed, whether that's through nutrient deficiencies and changing the diet or just simply getting more sunlight and actually getting your bare foot to the grass, like
Mhm.
these kind of things. But we're we're in such a dopaminergic society. That's where the peptide is why everybody wants to speak with someone as soon as they talk about peptides, because peptides are just setting off those dopamine regions. And so then, that's what's like just drawing people in. But when I feel like I can very confidently and simplistically explain to people why, okay, yes, this peptide can be wonderful for you. Here's when it can be utilized, but here's what needs to be utilized first. And I've never really gotten pushback. I never really had someone say, well, okay, if we're not doing peptides, I'm not going to work with you. Right. So I'm very lucky that I have the ability to have that conversation with people and have them grasp like, okay, this is what we should be doing. Like my biggest thing is, Vanessa was talking bioregulators. Like I do bioregulators way over peptides in the majority of my people that I
And
work.
why is that? Share why.
So far safer, number one. So the way that I always explain it is peptides will enhance physiological processes,
Mhm.
right? If you have a blown tire, you do not want to drive faster. You want to pull over, right? Like you got to
Mhm.
fix that tire. So that's what peptides will do. Peptides are just going to put your foot on the accelerator. So there is a time and a place for that. Of course, you definitely want to put the foot on the accelerator in lots of conditions, but the bioregulators, the way that they're designed, number one, peptides, we try to say I believe the language is short sequence amino acids. They're actually very long compared to bioregulators.
Mhm.
So when you look at that long sequence of amino acids, that needs permission to enter the cell. it has to bind to a receptor. And when you work with chronically ill individuals, their receptors are shot. They're full of toxins and viruses and who knows what else, mold, etc. So number one, they can't bind. Number two, if they do bind, I always call it the moth, the lamp. So all of a sudden you activate a receptor and that mycotoxin is like, not on my watch. And then it goes in and sits on those receptors. So what happens? Ooh, double your dose of GLP, right? Like, and so this, and then we just run into more problems. So bioregulators, they're anywhere between 2 to 4 amino acids, so very tiny, meaning they can just hop skip right into that nucleus without any permission, and they're going to unravel the DNA.
Hmm.
Because as we, I don't even want to just say as we age, because we have seen this even in very young individuals. When we experience illness, we can see the like the tight raveling or like I refer to it as like you're wringing out a cloth with your DNA. So it can't express a gene. So rather what happens is we get genes that say, hey, let's create a bunch of inflammation. They get stuck on. And the one that says, hey, let's calm down this inflammation, they
Mhm.
get silenced. So bioregulators are going to break that silence. They're going to promote that healthy genetic response. That's why they're whole the part of the longevity, but they're can be utilized for much more than just longevity. They can be utilized to bring a person out of like a deep spot. Now, with that being said, you obviously still have to have your caution, disclaimers, etc. But they usually are much safer than peptides
Mhm.
because if I had to be very simplistic about it, it's homeostasis. They're just promoting homeostasis.
I was
Is
gonna
what
say they felt like they're regulating, they're balancing, it kind of makes
regulators.
me think, it did make me think of
Yeah.
homeopathy. And when I was
Yeah.
listening to a podcast on it where you talked about it as well, and it was like similar to using like a homeopathic sarcode. Like, so if I give homeopathic liver to somebody, it's like the healthy tissue of liver. It helps the liver again find balance and homeostasis and like work better. And it seemed like it was similar to that. Like it's just helping being a regulation. Um,
Yep.
and I love that you talked about setting the foundation because I always say to my clients, like, nothing is a panacea. There is no one quick fix. There's no one magic homeopathic remedy that's going to fix all your things. There's no one magic flower essence that's going to fix everything. Like, you've got to set the foundation first with, of course, with creating rhythms, light, all of that, increasing your voltage, like all of that, I feel is super foundational for people. And I do feel like the peptides are this like, oh, is this like quick magic fix thing that I can use and it's going to fix all my problems? And I'm not against using a tool, but what I'm against is using a tool thinking it's going to fix all your problems and then forgetting to do all of the other foundational work that is so valid and so important, right? Like if your circadian rhythms are crap and you're scrolling on your phone all night and you're taking a GLP-1 and you think that's going to fix your like I don't try to sound harsh here, but like that's the truth of the matter. Like it's not probably going to do you as much good as if you were also doing the good foundational work. But then there's also them people in my mind who are going to think of like they're not capable of doing the foundational work. So then can something like that help them? Like they're just like they're not because I do have these clients who like there's some sort of block, right? And they're like I can't even do what you're asking me to do. I'm just not capable of doing the lifestyle stuff. So can something like that still come in and help? That's my question.
100% yes. And so that's once again where like it varies from person to person. There are many times that I utilize peptides to simply just create compliancy, to create trust, to create that buy-in when you're very logical about them. And so like the way that I kind of laugh at peptides like in a funny manner is like peptides, they cause you to ignore what is actually going on. So you're driving down the highway and all of a sudden your car starts making this clunky noise. It's just you turning the radio up. That's it. That's the meme. So that's what peptides are doing because you're just turning up a stronger signal, but you're not acknowledging that other signal that's happening. And I always try to say like, especially because we speak about GLPs a lot because they are such the craze right now. It's like it's hard to say because I just like you don't okay, so you don't have an Ozempic deficiency. You probably have a GLP deficiency, like a natural GLP deficiency, but you don't have an Ozempic deficiency. You don't have a retatrutide, a Mounjaro, whatever deficiency. Not saying you cannot utilize these things, but it's understanding that there are other factors at play. So utilize the GLP, but don't stop there. It's like diabetics. I can eat whatever I want now because I take insulin or I got
Exactly.
metformin. No, it doesn't work like that. It's going to work like that for a week, maybe 6 months if you're lucky. And then all of a sudden, bam, well, sir, you have, a cyst here. We got to remove one of your kidneys or whatever, right? Like, and so you still have to understand that there's a reason you're in this position. And you can't, you're right, there's no magic pill, even though GLPs, for example, could seem like that for a lot of people. It's there's still something underlying. And I use the language like manifestation. So whatever was happening that the GLP or whatever sort of peptide stopped, it's just going to manifest in a different area. It might take a month, it might take a year, it might take
Mm.
2 years. It's just going to manifest in a different area. It's just like using medications that suppress the immune system. I am not anti-medication. There's a time and a place for these things, but they're going to block something. Then we have that whole homotoxicology process. For those that don't know, is where you store everything. You store it in deep tissues all the way to your cells, right? And that's going to manifest later as who knows what. It could be as bad as cancer, autoimmune diseases. And that's the problem that we are witnessing with GLPs. And while I'm blabbing on here with something in my brain is like, we're actually starting to see brain atrophy from GLP usage. And in my mentorship group, someone asked, like, could you please elaborate on that? One way that I view it is if you don't use it, you lose it. So if you start shutting down specific regions in the brain, there's going to be that atrophy. It's just like autophagy when you clear out immune cells you don't use. And so there's that aspect. But what do GLPs do? They satiate you, they drive down your appetite so you don't eat, and then you go exercise 6 days a week and you're nothing but catabolism, right?
Yeah.
Of course we're going to see atrophy. Like we're
Yeah,
going to
the
see this
body has to
atrophy.
compensate somehow, somewhere, right?
Yep.
It's going to shift.
Yep.
So it's just like in homeopathy, suppressed symptoms, they're going to come out in a different way. They're going to be pushed deeper in the body, create bigger problems. So it's the same thing you're talking about. And
Mhm.
so there's no quick fix, like Vanessa said. There's just no way around not going into the deepest layers and trying to heal from the inside out. And so I was just curious, like, so would you consider bioregulators like a subset of peptides, or are they a whole separate class? That's my first question. Then you're saying they basically work at a deeper level than the bioregulators work at a deeper level than the peptides. Did I get that right? Or
To a degree, yes. They're both going to have the potential for like, so bioregulars is pretty much literally just genetic responses where peptides or could be many other things, but it can still come down to a genetic level. But I would classify them differently. Like that's just my personal thing. I don't know if like some chemists would disagree or what when you get, if you want to get that literal, but in my view, I do look at them differently because if I want to enhance someone, a bioregulator isn't going to do that theoretically. Peptides are going to enhance. So if I want you to run fast, I mean, like if you're sick, a bioregulator will help you run faster because it's going to heal you. But if you're already like healed and you're not sick, that's where bioregulators, that's where they become more longevity. That's where it's because I don't care how healthy you are, like the thymus gland is the most atrophied organ in the human body, I believe, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
100%, right? So it's like, okay, using bioregulators like, thymogen alpha 1 or whatever to rejuvenate that thymus gland to keep that immune education, T cell maturation, meaning T cells are more mature, meaning they're smarter to be able to identify infections and stuff. That's where a bioregulator comes for the longevity portion. And so peptides, they're the ones that's going to take you to that next level, right? So that's where it's like you'll hear like I always make fun of like bearded bald guys that yell on Instagram, and so a lot of people know who I'm talking about. But they work with a different type of population, right? It's like bodybuilding coaches talking very like from a very authoritative figure, like this is what this does. Yeah, but you're working with genetically gifted people who are a little you know, something going on in their head that they're way harder than the rest of the population and they're willing, like, you're going to get a different response than my 80-year-old grandmother who knits and wears slippers everywhere, right? Like, but the way these people speak about peptides is it's universal. Everyone's going to get this response and everything, and it's like when you start to understand that peptides enhance they push things. Well, if I forced you to do something that you don't want to do, how would you feel?
Mhm.
That's the simplest way of looking at it, right? Where bioregulators, they work with you. They work
Mm.
with.
So
That's
you're
how
big,
I kind of.
you're much bigger on these, it sounds like, and they seem a lot safer and they seem a lot more of a better avenue. I mean, I used thymus alpha when we talked about it. I used BPC 157. My brother used a ton of peptides in his own healing journey. I mean, tons of TB 500, and he would have injuries because he's a gym rat, and he'd use those
Yeah.
and it would work like amazing. And he's like, this is the best thing ever. But he was always like, you should really cycle these and don't like take it long term because there's negative effects. And even thymus alpha 1, like you said, you were surprised I could handle it versus like take, I was afraid of LL37, but I've handled that
Yeah.
fine because you're really activating the immune system like greatly when you take that one. Is that why? Is that what you?
Right. So I look at it in the view, like Heather's very familiar with this. I'm not sure if you've heard me speak on this, Vanessa, but I look at the immune system as a teeter-totter, is how I view it. A lot of people are under the impression that it's either like hypervigilant, if you will, so autoimmunity,
Mhm.
or immunocompromised, so suppressed. Well, realistically, we have 7 different pathways on our adaptive immunity, and think of it as a teeter-totter. So
Yeah.
something like thymosin alpha 1, a lot of people are going to be more towards either Th2, so the antibody production side, Th9, so the mast cell activation side, or and this is very simplified. Like I could, this is we're just keeping this very simplified, and then Th17, which is the autoimmune side. More people are on that side, and it's the Th1, which is our intracellular immune system. It's what goes in, mainly viruses, but it'll also intercellular parasites, mycotoxins, etc. We are tipping the scale away from that because if you're pushing on this side, you're gonna, right, the teeter-totter is gonna lift this way. So thymosin alpha 1, you'll read like research that it's gonna activate T regulatory cells. So that would be like a dude in the middle of the teeter-totter trying to balance it out, right? Well, it's more about Th1. So what happens is a lot of people are sitting like this with their immune response. They're completely imbalanced, heightened in a different path while Th1 is suppressed. So all of a sudden you have this rapid replication of like viruses that your immune system can never identify, like Epstein-Barr virus, cytomegalovirus, streptococcal, HSV, those ones. And then you take thymosin alpha 1 and all of a sudden the immune system spots that virus. It's going to go hard after that virus. And I've done this to people and felt terrible about it. And they've been sick for like 3 months. They come out of that though, and they're like, this is the best I've ever felt because they just spent 3 months of trying to burn off that virus and balance things out. But then it's a huge balancing act in that process because they're exhausting so many resources. They're creating so much inflammation. So it's like pounding the curcumins and like all these things. But the
Mm.
body identified that virus. So I like never use thymosin alpha 1 anymore unless you're already somewhat healthy or we know there's not a large viral load and you're about to go travel because you prime the immune system to deal with all the disgusting people at the airport, right? Or if you were around someone who is sick and you're worried about getting, you can do that. So then it's prime because there is natural killer cell production from
Mhm.
thymosin alpha 1.
Mhm.
And so once again, we're just priming the immune response. But if you're somebody who's been imbalanced for years and all of these
Yeah.
problems are becoming intracellular, and then you just flick that on, you turn that light on, like you're gonna have a bad day. I've done it
So
to
funny
people.
because you would think like when I took it, I was in like this really, really sick state. And I was like, and then I didn't have that response. So that's so interesting to me, you
Yeah,
know?
there's always gonna be
Maybe I
somebody.
wasn't
There's
as
always
sick
gonna be
as I thought
somebody.
I was. Maybe, I don't know. Like, I mean, but if you would
Yeah.
have met me then, you would have been like, whoa, you okay?
What
So
was your dosage? Do you recall your dosage though?
no idea. I have no idea. I know I was putting a
Because there's
needle in
that
my
concept
husband was
too.
putting a needle in my belly, you know? No, no
Yeah.
rememberings of this though. But
Yeah,
yeah.
there's always someone, right? There's always someone, you know. It's there's always going to be somebody that's going to have a great response. Hence why everybody rants and raves about things like thymosin alpha 1 and stuff because it definitely does have its place. It definitely does.
I would say it helped, but it didn't do anything like fantastic either. I mean, honestly, quantum and circadian biology helped me more than thymus and alpha one.
Mhm.
Like, I mean,
Sure.
that's the truth of it, right? Like, so it was a support, I'm sure, but it didn't make my system go crazy. Like, it didn't have any
Mhm.
like kind of reactive things. So that was kind of
Yeah,
good. I'm glad
that's
to
good.
hear that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it could be a genetic component there too, right? Just a genetic component,
Yeah.
everything, you know. And if you're already doing the circadian stuff, like I'm not sure how you guys view this. The way that I view the mitochondria, other than what most people view it as, is just like, you know, the powerhouse of the cell and everything. I look at it as a transmission. I look at
Mhm.
it as it's what
Yeah.
shifts you out of fight or flight. It's what shifts you out of pro-inflammatory to anti-inflammatory. And many of us are walking around with broken transmissions. So if your transmission's busted and you force it into a gear and you can't get it out of that gear, that's where I think the reactions from something like thymosin alpha 1 come because you force it into that pro-inflammatory state or further into that pro-inflammatory state and you just can't pull it back into anti-inflammatory. Your gears are broken. And so when you have that whole the circadian biology and like the groundings and all the quantum stuff that you guys are about, that you're focusing on that transmission. You're fixing that transmission so you can actually shift out of that gear. So that could have been one of the mechanisms of why you potentially had a good response to
No, I
thymus.
can't remember if I did thymus alpha 1 or quantum biology for. There's like so many things like that you do and
Yeah,
I can't even remember.
okay.
But yeah,
Yeah,
no, I agree. If you're doing all that stuff, you are definitely priming the mitochondria to work better, faster, stronger with all the quantum and circadian stuff. And Heather and I talk about that. I mean, tons of episodes, go back and listen. So yeah, it's a huge boost to the whole system when you're aligned with nature correctly. So yeah, 100%.
100%. I don't know if you guys have had this, but I've had so many people where they've gone out for their first sunrise and 30 minutes of grounding and got the sickest they've been in
Oh
years.
yeah.
Right. And I don't, to be
Mhm.
like, I'm sure to the lay population that what happens is healing requires inflammation. People do not understand that. It's not, there's a reason, like symptoms are messages, they are signals, and we need to listen to them. But when we treat them as flares or, bad stuff, that causes us to ignore that signal. And so when we get sick from going out in the sunlight for the first time and going barefoot on the ground, you are literally improving the immune system to identify infections. You are swapping out this horrible, rancid, toxic fat that your cell is made up of right now for actual quality fat. You are coming out of like saturated fat to omega 3. Like it's just the list goes on. But oh no, it's a bad thing. The sun's so bad for me. The sun's going to give me cancer. And it's like that's one of the problems I think when it comes to like what I want to say we because obviously you guys have that whole I do the whole quantum thing too and biologies and everything. That's one of the problems is because like you put someone out in the sun, they get sick. Now they're afraid of the sun,
Yeah,
right?
it's
It's
a really
like,
hard thing. Yeah. We have to educate
so
people so much like you do. That's why I'm so grateful that you know all about all the quantum stuff and help clients get a solid baseline or a foundation of all the things that they can do. And it doesn't take that much time, but we are so disconnected from our bodies and understanding how they work. And this is very common in homeopathy too, where okay, we're going to help give your body some impetus to heal itself, and now you're going to have an aggravation because your body's actually able to have some energy to do what it needs to do in the first place. But people think they're worse because we don't understand, like you were saying, Curtis, that that's your body actually taking care of business, and the inflammation is the healing. That's the healing response. So we have to keep that education going so people understand like this is a good thing, and even though you might feel worse, that's how you're going to feel better. Like you said, the people who for 4 months felt like crap, and then that's the best they've ever felt thereafter.
yeah, yeah. And I
I
say like, oh, go ahead, Vanessa.
I was just gonna say I used to get a rash every year when the sun came out
Yeah.
again, like when the UV started coming back again. And I used to think, oh, that's such a bad thing. Like I must be allergic to the sun. And now when I learned all the, sunlight stuff, I'm like, oh, this is my body just clearing out some crap that I had and stored in through winter that now needs to express. And like, so when we get like things coming out on this, I think it's like we need more sunlight. Like I feel of it like it's very
Mhm.
homeopathic, like cures like we actually need more, but we just need to do it. It's that minimum effective dose, like we were talking about before
Yeah,
with whatever peptide or with the
yeah,
homeopathic remedy. It's like finding the dose where you can push the system, but don't push it too far because you don't want to, have that like too much
yep,
that the body can't handle. So it's like the push and pull that we
yep.
have to do with all things, sunlight therapy, red light, what homeopathy, peptides. It's like as practitioners, that's like why people need to work with somebody so much, especially with things like peptides,
Yeah.
because you need somebody to guide you and be like, yeah, you need to pull back a little bit on this, or like you need to reduce the dose or the frequency or whatever. Like that's the job?
Yeah. I always say you're going to be symptomatic, but it's about a threshold, right? Except like you come to me and you're like, I got a bit of a headache, but like I can still do my job. But if you're like, hey, I got a migraine and I can't see, like we've passed that threshold, right? And
Hmm.
I also, so I should send this to you guys. I laugh about it every time. So I used AI to create an animation on the 6 phases of homotoxicology. And just for anyone that doesn't know, I'll explain that in a second here. But it's hilarious because like at the very end, so okay, actually, so phase one is like excretion. And then so you just, peeing, pooping, sweating out toxins. Well, if that's, and this is just the way that I explain it. If that system becomes overburdened, the immune system kicks in, right? So we get inflammation. So we get the rashes on the skin, like you mentioned, Vanessa. We get these things because the burden, right? Sunlight, mobilizing toxins, burden becomes strong. So the immune system has to take over. Well, what's the first thing we do? We take antihistamines or we take Tylenol or we take
Yeah.
Advil. We shut that off. So what's the next phase then? That's the deposition. So this is where we see cysts, nodules, polyps. On the extreme side of things, tumors. And we know that because we're cutting tumors open and we're seeing mold and parasites and all sorts of things within these tumors. And then we start crossing that threshold, and now we're getting into that impregnation and then that dedifferentiation. So now these things are going onto cell membranes, and then they're actually getting into the cell. And then that dedifferentiation, which is the final phase of homotoxicology, is changing the identity of the cell. So that's where we see rapid replication, cancers or confusions or autoimmune disease, stuff like this. Well, you can't just go from phase 6 to phase 1. You're going to have to come back. So you're going to start pulling those toxins and infections out of the cell, out of the membranes, into the blood. Let the immune system do its thing. Like, so you're going through that reversal phase. And so why I laugh is because like at the very end, it's explaining that this could end up as cancer. And the dude's got a big smile on his face because AI is so dumb still. But that's it worked. The animation worked. Like a lot of people really clued in just doing the animation. Then I just like I typed out a script and did an AI voiceover or whatever. And I'll send it to you guys or whatever. It's kind of funny, but it worked really well. It worked really, really well for people to understand. Like you're going through this. I always say, unfortunately, these things just don't evaporate. They just do not evaporate. If they did, like we wouldn't have a job probably if they did, but or our jobs would be that much easier, right? And so that's the biggest thing is like when people begin to understand that you have to go through the reversal process of everything that you've experienced in your life, right? I think it becomes much more tolerable. There's a deeper understanding that okay, this symptom is not always a bad thing. And yesterday I was on a call with a client. He asked, he's like, what was the biggest turning point for your health? And I said, it was the day I stopped caring so much
Oh my
and
God.
caring about my symptoms. Like it's the day, the less you care, the better off you'll be. Now, obviously, there's a threat, like, don't eat pizza every day kind of idea. But I stopped looking at my bowel movements. I stopped checking my blood glucose. I stopped wearing track earrings. I stopped all of those things and started understanding that this is a natural process of life and you will get through this and it will get better. You just have to keep at it because I spent however many years putting bad stuff into my body and doing nothing to help it. It's going to take half of that at least to get it all out, right?
So if you're not
So,
focusing on those things, what do you focus on?
what do you mean? Like
Well,
for
you're
my
saying you
health or just,
stopped focusing on things that are bad or the healing signs. Is that what you're saying?
Mhm.
Okay.
I just focus on how much people upset me. People upset me more today. I was like, all right, you gotta do something. Hey, your
No,
liver's
but
probably a little overworked right now. You might need to do an enema, something like that. So that's kind of how I gauge it. Honestly, right? Okay, why did that person bother me so much today? And I'm like, "Oh, okay, maybe I should, do something different, right? So it's like right now I'm doing parasite protocol because of full moon. And so it's like this morning I was like walking and I'm just like just thinking back like I'm mad at people right now and then we're all okay, I gotta back off, reduce the dosage, right? Like that's kind of how I that's for me. I always look at it as
Huh.
motivation and anger. Those are my two things. So if all of a sudden I'm like looking at the screen and I'm like, oh, I really don't want to reply to Heather right now, then I'm like, oh, okay, that's
It's
what
mm.
it
like your mood, your resilience, your
is.
sociability
So
of.
that's how you're gauging things instead of these like tracking devices, what you're saying. Yeah. Yeah.
100%.
I love that. I love that. I went through like well, perfectionistic person for sure, right? So I went through like all of that, like everything has to be done perfect and a lot of rigidity and a lot of dogma. And I feel like the more you do that, like the more you focus on trying to heal yourself and like checking all the data and like how you did or used to wear a Garmin to sleep back in the day, like how did I sleep and is my stool perfect and tracking every little metric of your body and like taking your ketones and like all these things. The more you focus on all that, the worse your health usually is, I find, because you're like totally like you're like that's where your hyper focus is like all the time. Like how about you just go like have fun and like live your life, but like have like be responsible and know like what good health is, like what that looks like, but you don't have to be like rigid and dogmatic either,
Yeah.
about it. And I feel like that is when someone is reaching that balance, you know that they're really actually healing. When they can let go of that like rigidity and dogma and like everything's got to be perfect and I've got to track everything. Like I feel like that's a detriment usually. I'm like, people are like, well, how do you know how you slept? I'm like, well, I got up and I had lots of energy and I went to the bathroom. So I think I slept pretty good. Like I feel good. I have energy. I'm hungry and I went to the bathroom. I think I did good.
Yep.
Like that's it. Like that's all you need.
Well, and if they're working with someone, like, that's where it's like, this is what I tell them. I was like, that's my problem, not yours. Okay. You're paying me to make it my problem. So if you
Sure.
see something, you feel something, All you need to do is relay it back to me and then forget about it because that's what you're paying me for. I'm the one that needs to worry about it, not you, right? So I try to like really get people on that. And so it's interesting, like my brain just comes back to this where you said where some people are not able to implement like circadian biologies and stuff like this, and then that's where we can utilize peptides. I definitely do find certain peptides to be very advantageous for those that are stuck in that amygdala limbic fear-driven response where they are overanalyzing everything.
Mhm.
And so like that's where one of my favorite is Celink. And that one there, you can put it into a nasal spray and it activates over 80 GABAergic genes. And so it can give us this huge calming sensation. And I always jokingly say, it's kept me out of prison. I love selling. I love it. And my favorite part about selling, without getting too deep into the literature, is it trains you, right? So like you could get stressed out and take theanine, even GABA itself, whatever. People do CBD, THC, whatever, but you're just gonna have to keep dealing with that. Selling will create this nervous system resilience. So if you're constantly going into work with a horrible boss, or like there's a partner that's going through a tough time, it's when like you do that around those scenarios. So it's like, for example, like if you're going to hop on a call with a client that like is bothering you, it's like take a couple sprays, go into that call. You'll notice that every time, call after call, you'll be less reactive. Or if someone does set you off, like your first instinct should be grab selling. Like you don't want to use this every day because I'm sure, as you're aware, overactivating neurotransmitters creates that imbalance effect. But I love selling. That's a really good one. I also love Pinolon, the bioregulator Pinolon, because it will
Yeah.
also help pull. So believe it or not, it doesn't actually work on the pineal gland. Believe it or
Okay, it
not. I
sounded
don't know why
like
it's
it. That's
called
why I
Pinolon.
asked you.
I know. I don't know why. It's Russian stuff. I don't know why. But so epitalin's gonna be more the pineal gland. But with Pinolon, so on a I don't know, scientific view, whatever, it's driving down oxidative stress in the brain. Like it's that deep, deep brain healing.
Mm.
But on the conscious side of things, it definitely can help pull you out of that amygdala limbic system, so the fear-driven side. And the way that I explain to people, the first time that I had ever done Pinolon, the sun was brighter and felt warmer. The grass was greener.
I
Food
love that.
smelled and tasted better. So it takes you out of that amygdala and puts you in that prefrontal cortex. So I like that. I like J147, although that's not a peptide. That's actually a compound from curcumin, an extract. I really like J147 because it'll help heal up dopamine neurons and enlarge the prefrontal cortex. And then don't ask me how to spell this. I can send it to you later. Isoliquirtrogenin. So
What is it?
I just love isoliquirtogenin. That one there, I just love saying it too. That one there activates, that's just a supplement. It's just an extract from licorice root. It activates both GABA A and GABA B, so mind and body. So that's my favorite one. So that's actually for me, if I wake up in the middle of the night, I'll take that and I'll fall back asleep, no problem. Especially if I woke up because of like anticipated stress or something like that. Like, oh no, I gotta go deal with this today or something. Isoliquirtogenin really helps me fall back asleep. Not everybody's gonna have that same feedback, but a good portion can like that. Because especially if you got like
Mm.
Oh yeah.
restless legs, stuff like that, because of that GABA B activation, so the body activation. So
Mm.
those are like some of my go-tos, for helping people that are stuck in that fear-driven limbic system kind of idea. But then you also just really consider like parasites. That's a really big one.
Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Those are really great. Thank you for sharing that. That's awesome because that can be really tough when people are stuck in that limbic system and that fear-driven state. That's a tough one. And I feel like that fear really when it takes hold of a person like that. And I was totally there. And it was always signal like I remember like the pain would cycle it. Like I'd be like, I'd have pain and then the fear and the symptoms, and I just couldn't get out of it. So yeah, those would have been nice to have back then. I used to open up the L-theanine capsules and throw them in my mouth in the middle of the
Yeah.
night when I was really bad,
Um,
because it would help and it would calm me, but it would still
yeah.
like I went through a real rough time. We won't go into it too bad, but anyway, I love that you shared all that. Those are really, really good topics and
Phosphatidylserine is good too. Phosphatidylserine can help. Just that one you want to be careful with because it will drive down your cortisol. So if you're already low
Mm,
cortisol, don't be taking phosphatidylserine. It's important to understand the difference between like because you can have like anxious feelings with low cortisol. That's your catecholamines, your
yeah.
adrenaline, your norepinephrine, histamine in the brain. So then you think, oh, my
Mm,
cortisol's high. So then you take phosphatidylserine and just make things worse because what goes up must come down. What goes down must come up. So you just create more of a cortisol imbalance. But if you know you're high cortisol, whether it's I prefer urine, but you could also look at salivary or blood. then you can utilize something like phosphatidylserine to help balance out that
Mm.
cortisol. Plus
It's so,
cellular health.
yeah, it's so important to really work with somebody and know, right? Yeah.
So you
And
have
when
so
you're,
much knowledge. How do you serve people? You do individual work, but I mean, how are you training, practitioners, or what's your future and how to convey or help people learn all the things that you know to get more people help?
Yeah, so I actually do have that mentorship group. I actually do mentor in the group setting. It is enjoyable. I like that. I do really enjoy that. I have private mentor students. That one is pretty cool because I always tell people like everybody wants a guide, right? They want to read an article, they want to read a guide, but at the end of the day, it's the case studies. And everyone's like, how do you know so much or whatever? I've mentored for over a decade. Like I've had mentors for over a decade for people that have been doing it 20 years longer than I have. And so that is probably where I've gotten the most knowledge, which is giving me the foundation to apply it to gain that experience. So experience at the end of the day, right, is what it is, but it's mentoring. And so that's where a lot of my passion lies too, is mentoring. And the reason being is because I've been a part of so many mentorships where I'm just like, that was a waste of money, right? And so it's like I also started a group for a general population members group because I've been a part of so many groups and I just see the things that are missing. And I've also had people come forth explaining like, oh, there's no this, there's no that. So I want to try to provide as much as I can with that and everything. I love coaching people, but it doesn't matter how many peptides I do. It doesn't matter how much pig brain I inject myself with. You can only handle so much. And so that's why I would rather kind of gear like my future would be more of the whole mentorship side of things, but I will always have clients. But I've learned to like put a cap. I've learned to put a cap on things and I've changed my packages and stuff because it's like I used to offer weekly calls. Now I don't anymore unless it's really severe because it's just too much, right? And so it's I have a lot of avenues going on that I try to help people with. So even just Instagram, I try to put out good content on Instagram. I hope anyways. I
Your
hope I do.
content is
no,
excellent. You
I
do
know, I think
Q&A
your
every
content's great.
week. It's so good. I mean, you're on there all the time. It's a real service that you provide. So thank you.
Very random though. I'll say that. It's very random because I kind of don't care, right? Because it's like, I like I mean this well, but like, business is really good. So it's like one of those things where it's like I don't need to like market myself very hard. And I do want to reach more people though, because I want there to be hope. It's like, when I request a testimonial from someone, I'm not requesting it for business. I'm requesting it because bring hope to people, but it also brings hope to my existing clients.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I had one woman that was like, we were just talking about that whole fear-driven side. She was spiraling hard. And the timing just happened to get this testimonial and I shared it. And she did a complete 180, literally from just me sharing this other woman's testimonial. She did a complete 180. Right. And so it's one of those things where I want to create Instagram content for hope, so people can understand.
Absolutely.
And all you have to do is yell and shout on Instagram. That's all you have to do. And people think you're right. And there's
I
so much misconstrued information. So that's what I try to follow. Okay, all right, what is somebody saying? Are they right? Is there a lot of context and nuances to this? So like I did one on yesterday on MOTS-C. And MOTS-C can literally cause anaphylactic shock in individuals. And nobody knows why. And these people yelling and screaming about how MOTS-C is makes you superhuman when you stack it with Retta. And then someone goes and injects themselves and gets all rashy. And then, and then they think they're the problem. This person has made them feel like they're the problem
yeah.
because Montse is this all touted amazing thing. It could be, right? But all of a sudden, this person thinks they're the problem because this authoritative figure on Instagram, for those who aren't watching quotation marks, that just yelled and screamed. So, like from a psychological perspective, people who teach you how to market, they'll teach you that. You got to yell and you got to do this. Fear mongering. What's the best way to draw in business?
Fear.
It's fear mongering. Scare people.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I try so hard. I always apologize. If I've ever made you fearful to anybody, I apologize because like I try so hard not to come from a place of fear and a place of like support. But yeah, it is so true. That's why my Instagram doesn't have a lot of followers because I don't drive a lot of that nonsense. Like I'm not going to be the one to tell you like you got to do this or this is bad's going to happen to you. Like I'm just not going to do that. Like it's just not my style because I know how much fear ruined my health. So I'm very cautious to not allow that to come into my Heather and I, we had an episode we talked about fear versus love. Like we want to spread love, not fear, and like support people. And
Right.
I love that you shared, like you're not sharing that testimonial because you want more people to work with you, because you want to give people hope. Like that's the key right there. And that frequency of where you're coming from makes an impact and makes you a good person to work with. And honestly, I feel like people are taking their advice from Instagram or TikTok or wherever they are, like their health advice, way too seriously. Like you should not be injecting yourself with something based off what somebody said on Instagram. You need to work with somebody before you start putting something in your body, whether that's a homeopathic, high potency homeopathic remedy or a peptide or even supplements. Like you don't know what you're doing necessarily unless you're well researched. And that's why working with somebody is the key. You cannot like just like buy a bunch of stuff and like piecemeal protocols. Like it's just a really not smart idea. So that's my soapbox.
Yeah. Well, and like along those lines, I always say too, for individuals that do that, everything works until it doesn't. So they're going to get this initial response that's going to create this biased thought process because it was such a great response. Like we see that a lot with diets, right? You'll have
Oh
somebody
yeah.
that went from eating, McDonald's and KFC to going carnivore, and all of a sudden carnivore is the best diet in the world, right? Where their cells are already full of saturated fat, right? Like, and so it's like we become very biased to these things, and I've fallen guilty to it as well. Like I've gone through my phases where something worked really well for me. So they're like, oh, this is the missing piece of the puzzle. And then like you're implementing it with individuals. It's like, why isn't this working? It works so well for me though. Right. Like, and then you get blinded to what is actually happening. And so that's one of the problems once again with Instagram. Then it's like, this individual is telling you that this is going to work. And then you do it. And then you start to think, what is wrong with me? That's the biggest thing that I encounter is like, what is wrong with me? Or like, I'll work with somebody, they'll come on for a consult and they'll say that they're doing this and because it worked really well, and they'll never correlate that with it's the reason why they're having problems right now. And you can't, it's so difficult to talk them out of it and because they've just made, because it was the only thing that helped them in that moment. But your body is forever adapting. It's forever adapting to these things, and it needs that input for that change. So if you're just giving it the same input, you're not going to get the best adaptations you could, right? So it's diversity is key in a lot of things, but not not in the context of like peptides and stuff. But I always say everything works until it doesn't, and that's the biggest thing that I see with Instagram and medications. Once again, not knocking on medications. I'm not anti-medication, right? I always say, of course, the pharmaceutical industry does not care about you. You are just dollar signs to them. But the scientists who founded that medication, they cared about you.
Hmm.
That was the whole reason that they put their life's work, all those sleepless nights and everything to figure out how could they help this person. Now, maybe there's a little bias there too, right? Especially with anything that suppresses the immune response. Yes, you're helping that person achieve instant symptom relief, but let's ask what's happening behind the curtains, right? Like what happens when you suppress one of the most intelligent systems on this planet, our immune system, right? And so that's my job is like someone comes to me, we just talked about fear, which I got to kind of backtrack because I think I'm creating a little bit of fear around retatrutide right now. So I'm trying to clear that up with people that, you don't need to be scared of retatrutide, you just have to be smart. But it's like medications. There's a lot of fear around medications. Well, just if you understand the mechanism of the medication, what it's going to do, you can utilize a medication, but you have to support the rest of the system, right? And this is to try to make sense of this to anyone watching without, going into deep literature and stuff like that. If you take away the immune system, you got to put something in that can manage infections and toxins. That's the simplicity, right? Like it's obviously not as simple as that, but that's the idea, right? If you're taking a system away, there is another source that could work right now to help. And then you can start to wean off said medication, right? Like you look at biologics blocking Th17. Well, now you've taken away the immune system from the blood. So just, it could be honestly as simple as just taking oregano oil for some individuals because candida will really spread through the blood, lymphocytes. So a lot of people don't know that you come in and an immune cell can engulf that candida. And then all of a sudden, a macrophage comes in, your janitorial crew for the immune system dumps it into the lymphatic system. Well, that candida can break out of that macrophage at any point in the body, anywhere through the lymphatic system. And that's where we can see these systemic candida infections because they're just getting out at certain points of the body. right?
Mm.
So you just take something to maybe help manage that. It's not always that easy, but sometimes it is. So
It's just so
so if you're gonna
nuanced and sophisticated. That's why
yeah,
Vanessa's saying, yeah, we really need to have support and have be able to work with someone who's going to guide us through all that because it's a lot to sort out and understand what's affecting what and what's the root cause. And so, yeah, and I think people are scared because it is a lot. It is a lot, and then they're manipulated. It is used in a lot of marketing, and I think the fear is really the underpinning of a lot of what happens in the first place because we can have an emotional experience that we don't get help for, and then that fright or shock, and then that's pushed into the body, and then that gets us off balance. Like you're saying, it's all about homeostasis. Like we should be able to experience something, but then have the right support or inputs or a way to emotionally process it, right? So then that moves through, but instead, then we get out of balance, and then we just go down this trajectory. So it's really unfortunate. And I think there's so many things about our reality now, our co-created reality, they say, that is really scary for people to think about what's going on. And so I think we need more support now than ever. And so thank goodness you're here, Curtis, and you have all this knowledge to share and that you're training people and but you're still accessible for one-on-ones. I think that's fantastic. So
yeah, yeah.
anything else you want to share as we start to wrap it up with our listeners about just how they can help themselves and or any tips on what they could do for fear in general if they're just trying to help themselves on their own? What do you think?
One thing that I like to say, because like obviously I know all your listeners are gonna be aware of all like the foundational piece and stuff. This is my view, and I think it's helped a lot of people. Everything is an opportunity. Everything, every symptom, every test, every moment, every day, everything is an opportunity. And I think if you can shift your mind to that thought process, you can better manage a lot of things that you're dealing with, right? Like someone upsets you. This is an opportunity to maybe understand why it upset you, why they're upset, whatever sort of situation happened, and grow from it, right? I had this symptom this morning. I had pain in my wrist or whatever. Don't look at it as an opportunity to freak out about it, right? Look at it as an opportunity to try to discover why am I having this, right? And I can definitely see the exhaustion part of this. Like you have people that have been sick for 30 years and have tried everything, right? They've tried everything. So there's just like this solidified pathway in their brain. And that's where, side note, saffron could maybe help, by the way. It can help with those pathways, changing the pathways in the brain. That's something to consider. But then obviously like the big like cognitive behavioral therapy, EMDRs, all those kind of things. There are also like I suppose you guys could just cut this out if you know this, but I'm a huge advocate of psychedelics. I think psychedelics play a large role in healing. That does not mean you go to your buddy and say, hey, but I don't think we should write those things off, but that's an entirely different conversation. But viewing everything as an opportunity, especially testing.
Hmm.
That's the biggest one that I see that takes someone from a fear level of 7 to a fear level of 10 is testing. Testing is a blessing or a curse.
That was me. It was me. I was totally me. I was like, the testing made it things so much worse. I wish I never had them. So it's like, oh my God, I have mold, I have H. pylori, I have this, I have that. I'm like, now what do I do? Like, I'm dying. I had a nutrition response guy like that does the energy. He's like, it was fear. He got me to work with him through fear. He's like, every organ in your body is basically shutting down. And I'm like, well, I guess I'm going to work with you because you can help me, right? Like, because he drove it by fear again. So for me, all of that made things so much worse. Like it was the befriending my body and befriending the symptoms and doing exactly what you're saying, looking at them as an opportunity and say, hey, this is going on. Okay, what does that mean? And how can I support my body better? Right? Like that. That was the difference. So true. The testing made it so much worse for me.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. That's why like I sometimes I have to go through a different company, but for the most part, I can send testing to people and then I get the results.
Yeah, I
And
love
then I
that.
do not share them until I have come up with okay, this is how I'm going to explain them to them,
Good idea.
right? But even then, it's just like I had a woman the other day, bless her, I love this woman, but her calprotectin was elevated and she was very upset about that. And to me, like, so then I try to explain it. Okay, this calprotectin reading is an excretory reading of you excreting neutrophils, what you're supposed to be doing. So once again, if it's elevated, okay, it's different if you came off the street and you haven't been doing anything and you see elevated calprotectin or any marker for that matter. Once again, it's still an opportunity, right? But when you're in the context of like healing, what did we say in the beginning? Healing requires inflammation. Of course, we're going to see neutrophils in the stool. That's the whole point of it, right? We're trying to clear these things out that have been stuck in the lymphatic system, or these neutrophils are going after bacterial infections, and they have to come out in the stool, right? But a person who has been through hell to that, like to that's hell to them, it's very difficult there. And so that's where it's like I've had people not work with me because I refuse to do testing.
I love that. I don't do testing either. Heather and I don't do any testing. So zero testing.
I'll do it after an X amount of time because I like to think I'm pretty good at what I do, but there's definitely some things that, can be missed.
Yeah.
So I like it for that because that will happen from time to time. But there is also like when you really start to understand the personality of the person, it's like they need that buy-in. So you know that this problem is here. You know it. You don't need a test. They need to see it on paper, though.
Yeah,
They
they're
need to
awesome.
see that, okay, so, oh, Curtis was right. There is mold or there is a bacterial infection. There is Clostridia, right? And
Yeah.
now they're more willing to be compliant. They're more willing to put the effort forth to treat such
Yeah.
things. Because if they don't visually see it, they don't, why am I doing this? Why would I do this?
Yeah, they
Right?
Yeah.
need the
Yeah.
evidence. They need to have proof, and then they can
Yeah.
go, okay, now I'm ready. It's a
Yeah. Now
psychological.
I don't have a choice. Now I gotta do it. That's kind of what it is.
To
Yeah.
me, the symptoms can tell you pretty much what's going on with somebody typically, and you just go by that.
100%.
So
Yeah.
that's
100%.
what I usually go to. But yeah, there are people who like the testing and they want to have that information. That's fine. And I
Yeah.
love how you're really mixing in all the things, Curtis. Like the vibe I get from you is there's no rigidity, there's no dogma. I can use all the tools in my toolbox and I have many of them to go to, right? And I'm willing to, use all of those. And that's amazing. I don't
Yeah.
know what happened in my hand there.
It's
Is all
fantastic.
your hand was up. Well, people are like, well, how do you work with this? I was like, whatever it takes. Like, I don't know. We're gonna find out. You fill out your intake form and let's get started. Like we'll figure it out. You know what I mean? Like, sure, I could give like a bro, okay, like most people, especially if there's any of that sort of like, okay, there could be several things going on. I usually start with parasites because they can be such plugs of things like the bile ducts and the liver and everything. And so you can't get in, like even with homeopathics, you can't get things out, right? But yeah, like it's adaptability. It's I adapt to whatever that person needs. So whether they need therapy, whether they need a peptide, whether they need to run testing, right? Whether they need to not talk to me for a month and go chill out on a beach, right? Like it's that adaptability to whatever the biology needs. It's not just, oh, this is it or this is it. And that's why, Heather's heard me say this many times. I do not believe in root causes. I don't think there's any such thing as a root cause. There's so many variables and things that's happened through life that have led to this position. There's the straw that broke the camel's back, right? You'll always have it. There's someone goes through a stressful event in their life and all of a sudden they start to get sick or they went to, I don't know, Bali and had some fish and next thing you know, they're on the toilet 30 times a day, right? So there's a straw that broke the camel's back. But what led to that? Yeah, sure, maybe even the healthiest people could get a parasite that puts them on the toilet for a while, but it's like there was something throughout your entire life that led to an imbalanced system that couldn't effectively prevent what just happened. So we have to go and restore that. We have to go figure that out. Nothing works in isolation. Everybody needs to repeat that 9,000 times in their head. Nothing. It's just like you said when you said people come to you for hair loss. You're like, well, there's a bigger problem, right? Nothing works in isolation. It's all connected. So people are like, when are we going to work on this? I'm like, we are right now. It's just sure we could isolate a little further, like the biggest one is when are we going to work on weight loss, right? So it's
Yeah.
like, okay, well, you could maybe do all right with a little bit. So then we'll focus a little more on, nutritional manipulation or heck, dare I say it, maybe a GLP or whatever, right? But nothing works in isolation. It's all connected.
I
It's all
love
connected.
that. I love that. I'm going to steal that. We are working on it because you're always working on it. When you're working on one thing in the body, you're working on everything in the body because it's all connected. So I do absolutely love that. That's awesome. Yeah.
Well, that's the
Yeah.
Yeah.
gift you have to offer is that it takes a lot of years of experience and training and like you said, all the mentoring and mentorships you've received to get to where you are, to be able to have that vast knowledge in the toolbox to then meet the client where they're at. So that's beautiful. So beautiful. So
You know, what it takes a
so
lot of, sorry to interject, let me say this quick. You
go
know, what it
ahead.
takes a lot of screwing up.
Oh yeah, right.
Well,
Yep.
that's how you
Trial and
learn.
A
experience.
lot of failure, a lot of failure. So
Yeah.
people are like, how do you know so much? I'm like, I've failed a lot.
Yeah.
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 But
But
I've
that's
learned
how
from it.
you learn. That's how you learn to
Yeah.
get better. Because if you didn't fail, you would That's how everybody learns anything. Like I used to be a teacher, my past life, this life really actually. But I mean, that's how you grow. Like that's how the kids got better at it when they didn't get the math problem right. And then we had to keep trying and figuring it out. And they got to find your way to figure it out. Like that's the only way we grow as individuals is by failure. And that's why we can't fear failure because it's going to bring us to a greater level of consciousness, really, honestly. So, I mean, failure is amazing because look where it brought you. So I love that.
And
I'm
that's the
all about
problem
it.
with Instagram because
Yeah.
if you have a million followers,
Mhm.
you're wrong, I'm right.
Oh, of
Yes.
course.
Mhm.
Yeah, of course.
That's the problem with today, right? So that's why
Yeah.
those people shouting on Instagram, they'll never learn because they have a million followers. So
Yeah.
obviously what they're doing is right and you're wrong.
Mm.
That's just
So
marketing. It's nothing to do with being right or wrong. I love
yeah.
that. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I love when I love about the root cause thing that you said too. I wanted to piggyback on that because it's like people are always looking for that like that one thing. Like even me, like I got really sick after a jab injury. Like I got after the C19 jab, I got really sick. Well, it wasn't just that. That wasn't the root cause. Like I try to explain to people, that wasn't the reason why I got sick. It was all the things, all the 30 years that I lived before that and all the things that I did previously to that also contributed to why I had a health collapse. It was like I could name 20 things off the top of my head to why I contributed. And there's more than the why that happened. And then you could even go deeper and say, like, well, what did my parents do? Right? And my
Yeah.
grandparents do? And what was the trauma that they're carrying and what was imprinted in my water? Like this is way deep. It's years in the making when somebody gets chronically ill. I mean, it's probably 30 years in the making, and it's also a lot to do with genetic predispositions and trauma
Yeah.
that's been passed down. It's so multifactorial.
Yeah.
So I love
Yeah.
all that. I did
Yeah.
want to close off by chatting a little bit about GLP-1s because I know it's such a hot topic and I want to just
Yeah.
like I want to bring it in because I want people to understand that using it as a tool maybe can be support, but using it as a fix-all is an issue. And my biggest concern with GLP-1s, and I'm sure it is yours, and I'm curious if you see this with women, is because one of the reasons why I got sick was also chronic exercise and under eating, right? So that was also a huge part of why I got sick. So my fear would be, and this maybe is my own fear, like if I ever use something like that, I was like, well, it would suppress my appetite even further, right? Or make my metabolism run slower. That's my concern with it. Now, do you see this? Is this a thing that you deal with people whose metabolisms are getting slower? They're less hungry, they're eating less, all of this, even on microdosing?
Yeah, because I was gonna say, I'm glad you brought up microdosing because I do say that the poison is in the dosage as anything, and I think that's the biggest problem is people are running far too high of dosages, and so like I think if you're very strategic about it, everybody just thinks GLP-1. So I scheduled my post. I talked about cagrilintide today. So like a lot of people, their reasoning is the food noise which you kind of have to support. But once again, it's causing you to ignore why that food noise is there, right? We're seeing, prefrontal cortex problems. We're seeing potentially glucose imbalances, stuff like that. Okay, glucose imbalances, that's the, point of the GLP, release insulin, regulate the glucose levels and everything. But when it comes to the prefrontal cortex side of things and like amygdala driven, that's where cagrilintide could be a little better because it's not going to have that whole insulin effect. It's going to have the let's drive down the habitual eating, the stress eating. Let's look at that, right? So being strategic with them, but you're right, like people will already be under eating and already constipated and go on a GLP. And so
Yeah.
when you look at this, those are the ones who are experiencing majority of the quote unquote side effects. I also do not believe in side effects. I don't think there is any such thing as a side effect. There are responses, there are
Mhm.
signals, there are messages. But as soon as we look at a side effect, we write it off. We completely write it off. We don't ever ask, why did that happen? Anyways, that's just my 2 cents. But it's like, yes, I think it's driving this further and it's creating more exhaustion of the human body. It's creating more catabolism, so the breakdown of the human body.
Right.
And, like, okay, sweet, I've lost some weight. I look a little bit better in the mirror or whatever. But like, what do they call it? The Ozempic face or whatever? Like, you can just see life is sucked out of these individuals because they're just further depleting themselves. And like you made the comment about over exercising and their training, especially for women, there are so many fitness-borne diseases. Like people do not understand exercise. They think exercise is the end all be all. They think it's this healthy thing and you're going to die if you don't exercise. You're going to die young with problems, right? It's no different than any supplement, any food, any peptide. There is balance. You have to be You have to be trainable. So it's that whole Hormesis model: stress, adapt, stress, adapt. Far too many people are only in that stress realm, not in that adaptation realm, and they're making it worse by adding in training. Then you throw a GLP on top of that, right? And you're just overriding the system. And so this is where we're seeing all of these like problems around GLPs, is because it's just further sucking the life out of these people and causing them to ignore what is actually happening. So if you're going to run a GLP, you want to be smart about it. You want to make sure you're choosing the right one. Like, what do you need for your situation? But then you have to go, okay, I'm going to use this. It's like antidepressants. I will support someone on antidepressant if they're so depressed that they can't even begin to start a protocol to get better, right? And we'll work on getting you off that antidepressant. We'll do what we have to do, right? So it's the same with the GLP. If you need this to get your mind into a position where you will actually begin to work on the deeper rooted issues, I will guide you. I will support you. But it's like you've said several times, Vanessa, it's like you have to work with someone who knows what they're doing, because people are handing out GLPs like candy when they don't even understand. Like I don't, my Q&A on Sunday, there's no such thing as a GLP-3. There's no such thing. What do they call retatrutide? A GLP-3. There's no such thing. There's no GLP-3 receptors, and there's no GLP-2 in retatrutide. So
Mm.
it's just bro talk is what it is. So that just tells you the kind of information that's out there about these GLPs. No one knows what they're actually doing. No one knows how to dose them properly. And also, more frequent injections will be far better than one bolus dose. Because that's what I normally see that doctors are prescribing, is like
Mm.
anywhere between 2.5 and 4.5 milligrams once a week. I always
That's a
try to,
lot.
like, what goes up, always think what goes up must come down. So if you're getting this huge spike of GLP expression, you're going to crash it, right? And then there's the whole receptor conversation. You start activating
Mhm.
these GLP receptors, you start flocking toxins and damaging the receptors and everything. So what's your instinct? Oh, I just got to increase my GLP, or I got to double up on the GLPs, and like, right? So it's if you're gonna do a GLP, work with somebody, be safe, responsible, but ask yourself, why do I have to even consider this in the first place?
Mm-hmm.
Have that conversation with yourself.
Yeah,
Why
that's
do I
so
even, why can't I lose weight? Why can't I decrease inflammation? Okay, I'll use the GLP while I'm trying to figure that out. But figure it out.
Wise.
Don't get the results from the GLP and sweet, okay, I'm happy. I don't need to do anything else. Because that's what we see all the time.
Yeah, I'm afraid that's
All
the
the time.
majority of people. Ugh.
Yeah.
yeah.
So if
Hmm.
somebody wants to contact you for either one-on-one or just inquiries of whatever nature, where can they find you, Curtis?
Yeah. So probably I want to make like a public post about this. I'm terrible for checking Facebook Messenger. I'm so bad. I looked the other day and I have like so many messages, like, oh my goodness. So Instagram is usually the better one. And I I think my profile is funct.med.curtis. So funct.med.curtis. Um, I think that's my profile. And then or just my website, which is lifestyle.empowerment.ca. So yeah, I'm from Canada, if anybody was curious.
Cool.
But
Oh,
yeah, that's
Yeah.
the best places to reach or whatever. So
All right.
wonderful.
Well, if they're interested in working with you, we'll have that all in the show notes for them. And yeah, remember, work with somebody before just injecting your body with things, please. My
exactly.
little soapbox at the end there.
Yeah.
It's worth it. It's
Yeah,
worth
yeah,
it, right? It's worth
yes,
it. So
yes.
Well,
Well,
thank you
so,
thank
so
you so
much,
much. We
Curtis.
appreciate
of
you
course,
coming on. Yeah,
of course. Thanks for having me, you guys. It's
I
awesome.
think.